On today's show, we have more updates on Jacob deGrom and him missing his first spring workout. A former Rangers pitcher has signed with the Angels, and a Rangers prospect has undergone Tommy John surgery. Got all that and more on this episode of Locked On Rangers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Rangers, your daily Texas Rangers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked onto the Texas Rangers. I'm Bryce Patrick, a cripplingly addicted Texas Rangers fan since 2010, the founder and host for all 4 seasons of this Locked On Rangers podcast. On today's show, we're going to get into a little bit more info on the Jacob deGrom situation, a little bit about a former Rangers signing. Also, we got some rankings, ranking the best tools at the major league level, and also a top 10 for AL players and NL players, according to your hosts at the Locked On Network. Thank y'all so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. If you're not already, you can follow me on Twitter at Bryce Patrick. You can follow the show at Locked On Rangers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe on YouTube, where the best way you can help grow the show is to comment, well, almost anything below. Just make it nice. Be respectful. That's all I ask. That's all I ask. Anyway, let's get into the news of the day. We are in day 2 of pitchers and catchers reporting. I thought they were reporting on Tuesday. Apparently, they were reporting yesterday. That's fine. That's when reporters were reporting on Tuesday, not on Wednesday. But yesterday, we got the news about Jacob deGrom missing his first spring workout, and everybody set into a 9-alarm fire, several alarm fires that were a bit too much, and I installed a new system for how to handle the concerns of Jacob deGrom. We had a deGrom, which is a new system patented by Locked On Rangers here, and we're at deGrom 4, which is the second lowest level of concern. We're moderately concerned. We're not extremely concerned. deGrom did talk to reporters today. Also, they talked to Bruce Bochy, and they talked to a lot of people. Basically, deGrom said that he had thrown off a mound 6 times heading into spring training this year. He was still throwing when the Rangers said, hey, he told him about the side tightness, like, hey, let's calm it down for a little bit. Let's slow down take a couple days. And said he normally would have thrown 2 to 3 times off a mound heading into spring training before. So this is him putting in some extra work for those who were in the comments saying, oh, well, Jacob deGrom's really not taking care of his body. We need to start blaming him for all this stuff. He's fine. It's a couple days. They're going to reevaluate him on Friday. Bruce Bochy made it seem like not a very big deal at all. This kind of stuff happens all the time. Remember how Martin Perez felt like halfway through spring training by the time he was actually throwing in spring training games. It did take him a couple of starts to get back up to that work level, but Martin Perez had a fantastic season, and you didn't see us freaking out over that. Granted, there is a little bit less of an injury history with Martin than there is with Jacob deGrom. But again, I've talked about it a million times. I talked about it on, I believe it was Tuesday's show, about the risks and rewards of this potential rotation. And until the last 2 years, Jacob deGrom has been very, very healthy. Didn't start pitching until he was a junior in college. So it's fine. Just take a breath. I know it's fun to react anxiously and extremely because there is some baseball news going on, but it's not that serious. It's not that serious. It could be a lot worse, So like I said, we're at deGrom 4, but we did have some other news, less exciting, less fun. Avery Weems, the Rangers prospect, who was one of the 2, maybe 3 players, basically the second piece in the Lance Lynn trade a few years ago with the Chicago White Sox. He had Tommy John surgery this week, and he will miss the season. A left-handed prospect who is probably moving more into a relief role. Didn't have the best season last year. Definitely has shown some flashes, but a really bummer news for him. If it was going to be somebody, then he's not in my top 30 prospects. So, it's a real bummer for anybody to have Tommy John surgery, but I feel like you always get that in the first week of camp. And hey, it's not Jacob deGrom. He's also not having the shoulder scope that Frankie Montas is having for the Yankees, so it's fine. Another bit of news about a left-handed pitcher who threw in the Rangers system last year at the major league level. Matt Moore has made it official, according to Ken Rosenthal. He and the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim of California of the United States, have signed a 1-year, $7.55 million deal. I'm a little surprised he didn't get a multi-year offer. I'm even more surprised that it took this long for him to sign because he was so freaking good last year, but this is the case, and the Rangers are going to have to deal with him quite a bit. Last year, I remember when the Rangers signed him out of camp, it was like, okay, they signed Matt Moore to a minor league deal. Great, we know what Matt Moore is. We know what he's been like. And oh, he's got this new curveball. He's totally different pitcher. Okay, yeah, sure, I've heard that a million times before. I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it at all. And then he had a 0 ERA for what was maybe a month and a half in AAA, and it's like, okay, cool. He's getting out AAA guys. Awesome. I mean, the Rangers' pen was not that great at that point, but it was like, it's nothing to get excited about. And then he went and was fantastic for the whole year. I think he is kind of a new pitcher. He still does have those walk problems, and apparently he was the lefty that the Angels bullpen needed. Talked with our Locked On Angels hosts about this, told them how much of a bummer it was that he was going to the Angels, but it's a really good signing, and they're very excited about it. They have done some reworking of their pen. It was one of their weak points last year, and adding Matt Moore is, unfortunately for the Rangers, going to be a pretty good addition for them. It's going to make the AL West even tougher with 4 teams really, really going for it next year, and I know stuff always happens to the Angels, but this and the rest of their signings this offseason, have made me really nervous. They're really smart, like uncharacteristically smart for the Angels, and this one feels kind of like it's on that same vein of being really good, and makes me a little nervous because this AL West is going to be no freaking joke. Anyway, let's get into the ranking of the best tools on the farm. We're going with the traditional 5 tools, as every prospect lover or prospect evaluator knows. That's basically what you got for hitters, and with pitchers, we're going with the best pitches and then command as well. We're going to start off with the hitters, and one of the theoretically easier tools to grade is the hit tool, and I'm going for this upcoming season and just in general of where these guys are. This one was kind of tough. I mean, it's more straightforward. I mean, you can generally look at batting average or on base. I mean, generally, I think of it the way that I was kind of taught when I was learning about prospect evaluation. It was more about the batting average, the ability to make contact, to recognize pitches. In general, it's just kind of an overall offensive approach. Just how good are they at putting the ball in play, recognizing pitches? I mean, the walk rate in the eye doesn't have as much to do with it as ability to barrel balls, to not strike out a whole bunch, but a lot of it is kind of the batting average. And when you look at the Rangers batting average leaders last year, it was by far Nathaniel Lowe. The next closest of the everyday regulars was Leody Taveras at 261. Nathaniel Lowe hit 302, and I think that wasn't a fluke. I think it was definitely something that is to come. I mean, obviously, Corey Seager had a lot of hits taken away by the shift. I don't know if he's going to get back to hitting 300. I think there's only been a couple years in his career where he has hit over 300. The last couple of years in 2020 and 2021, 307 and 306, and then hit 308 his rookie year in 2016. A career 287 hitter versus Nathaniel Lowe, who has not hit 300 for his career. I think it's a little bit lower than that. 278. So just a little bit lower than Corey Seager. I think there's going to be a big difference this year, but I think Nathaniel Lowe, we saw what he did down the stretch last year. I think that is a real indication that his hit tool is legit and is the best on this team. Coming up, we're going to look at the other tools on this Rangers major league team that are standing out. There are some close debates there, and I look at the top 10 position players in the AL and the NL. But first, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The midway point of the NBA season is here, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super duper easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scores and threes drained as well. Plus, FanDuel lets you combine bets for a chance for a bigger payout with the same game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook betting partner of the NBA. Now, let's look at the other tools on this list. Next up on the list, we have power, which is I'm very thankful for StatCast because it's giving us, or it's giving me the ability to more easily take a look at all of these and give a more objective ranking. So with this, I'm looking at different metrics like the max exit velocity, which is the hardest that a player hit a ball all season, the average exit velocity, which is basically how hard it's coming off the bat when they are putting it into play, distance, hard hit percentage, barrel rate, all kinds of things like that, because basically it comes down to there's two different types of power. There is game power, and then there is raw power. And I think raw power, this is one of the tougher ones to judge because there's three guys that are all pretty close. It's Adolis Garcia, Corey Seager, and Nathaniel Lowe. All those guys were very, very close. If you want to look at max exit velocity, Adolis Garcia and Nathaniel Lowe were the top of the list for the Rangers this year at 113 miles an hour. If you're looking at average exit velocity, Adolis Garcia was actually the highest average exit velocity for the Texas Rangers this year. If you're looking at balls hit 95 miles an hour plus, so hard hit balls in total, Corey Seager is the top of that list. If you're looking at percentage-wise, it's Adolis Garcia, who was barreling the most pitches as well as hitting the most hard all year. So I think I've got to give the edge to Adolis Garcia. Nathaniel Lowe, he was a guy who I talked a lot about in 2021, being someone who had a lot of raw power that didn't tap into it nearly as much in game. This year, that was not the case. Nathaniel Lowe really learned how to tap into that power of these guys. Obviously, Corey Seager led the team in home runs, but if you're looking at the total extra base hits, I believe it was Marcus Semien that led the team. Yeah, because he had 5 triples, 26 home runs, and 31 doubles. It actually might have been Adolis Garcia, I think, because he also had 5 triples, 34 doubles, and 27 home runs. But Adolis Garcia, I think when we're talking about raw power, his is way, way up there. He was able to have a little bit better at bats last year, have a little bit better of an overall offensive season. I really liked what I saw from him improvement-wise last year. Marcus Semien is definitely up there, but I think a lot of his numbers for being so terrible in the first couple of months really kind of ruined that. The next one is a little bit easier to judge. It's the run tool, and it's Bubba Thompson. Bubba Thompson is the fastest guy on this list. He is one of the fastest players in all of Major League Baseball. He is just faster than everybody else. Eli White was the only one on the team that was really particularly close to him in terms of just the raw speed, but Bubba's just the fastest, and I think that is going to play a big, big part. I'll probably talk sometime next week about the rules changes and how the Rangers are going to take the most advantage of that. I think Bubba is going to be a big part of that, them giving him the number 8, a single-digit number, showing, hey, we have confidence in this guy. Kind of shows, all right, yeah, they're going to find a way to use his steal, his speed, and his feel on the bases to generate a pretty big impact this year. Leody Taveras was kind of close, and Eli White is no longer on the team, so it's basically was Leody or Bubba, but it's Bubba. It's just going to be Bubba. We're talking about arm. This one was one that surprised me. I thought by far is going to be Adolis Garcia. I was like, all right, Adolis has got just that absolute cannon of an arm. We've seen him make such huge throws, but if we're talking about the max throw power and the average throw power, it's actually Leody Taveras. Leody Taveras has the strongest arm on the Rangers. I mean, there's a lot of really good throws from Ezekiel Duran. Duran is definitely up there, but in terms of the amount of throws, the accuracy of those throws, I mean, Leody Taveras is just way, way up there. Leody had one of the strongest outfield arms in all of baseball last year. It was just very, very impressive. And you always knew about Leody's speed and about his glove, his ability to read balls in the outfield. I didn't really know as much about his arm. I thought it was like fine, but I didn't get to see him that much in the minor leagues, so I didn't get that great of an evaluation on it. Didn't hear that many scouts that were like raving about his arm, but it's fantastic, and it is one of the better arms in all of baseball. And then the hardest one for me to rank, because there are all kinds of different players the Rangers have that are really good defensively. This is the glove. I think it's Marcus Semien. I mean, if you're looking at his outs above average, he was the best on the Rangers last year, and it was not particularly close. I mean, the Rangers had a lot of really, really good defenders last year, and it's hard to really quantify all of what a catcher does defensively. So Jonah Heim was very squarely in the mix on this, as was Leody Taveras. Corey Seager is fine. I'll let you know that Nathaniel Lowe did not crop into my mind for who was going to have the best glove on this list. Adolis was definitely up there. Josh Smith is one that I think is really underrated. I really absolutely loved what I saw from him defensively at shortstop and at third base, and I think he'd be pretty decent in center field as well. I really love Josh Smith's defensive versatility in his at-bats, but I think I've got to give the nod to Marcus Semien. I love his glove. I think he is a fantastic defensive second baseman, doesn't get nearly enough appreciation, as we'll get into in the top 10 position player rankings in the AL and NL a little bit later. But yeah, so hit tool, Nathaniel Lowe, power, Adolis, run, Bubba, arm, Leody, glove, Marcus Semien. Now, let's look at the pitchers. This one, these are a little bit easier because it's going to be a lot of Jacob deGrom. I'm going to go ahead and spoil that for you there because Jacob deGrom is absolutely amazing. So, looking at the best fastball in the system, it's shocker. It's Jacob deGrom. I've looked a lot of this for the pitches. I looked at the run value stat on Baseball Savant, on their Baseball Savant page, which basically kind of does an overall calculation of how well that pitch performed compared to the average pitch or to everybody else who threw that pitch in Major League Baseball. So it takes into account the amount of whiffs, the amount of times that it got batters out, how well batters hit against it, so their batting average, slugging, and things like that, how hard it was hit as well, and the expected numbers as well. And I mean, also just looking at the velocity and the spin rate and all of that, Jacob deGrom's fastball is just one of the most insane pitches in all baseball. I mean, the velocity is in the top 1% of baseball. The spin rate's the top 3% of baseball. Like, it's absolutely nasty. And the same goes for his slider. I mean, the Rangers have a few pitchers with some pretty good sliders. I loved what John Gray did with his slider last year. The overall numbers don't really bear that out, how much I think it improved, because he added the more horizontal, the sweeper, so it still counts as a slider. But I really, really liked what he did with that last year. And for other guys who were in that conversation, Andrew Heaney had a pretty solid slider last year, but Jose Leclerc is also a guy. Him and Jonathan Hernandez are both guys who were way up there. Their run value is actually a little bit better than Jacob deGrom's on their respective sliders. But I always pull back a little bit when people talk about Jose Leclerc's slider, because it is a cut changeup. It is not a typical slider. It is a different pitch, but it is still very, very effective. Last year, deGrom's slider was a -5 run value, which is good. It is in the red. And Jose Leclerc's was a -7. Jonathan Hernandez's was a -6. So both of those pitches were very, very effective. And so was Jose Leclerc's changeup, because he also has a circle change. So the circle change moves into right-handed hitters and away from into right-handed hitters and away from left-handed hitters. The cut changeup does the exact inverse, and both of them look almost exactly identical coming out of the hand, and it is what makes him so fascinating, as well as his super great spin rate on his fastball as well. If we're looking at the changeup, this is where it gets a little bit dicey, because there's so many different types of changeup. You can have a splitter, you can have kind of a Vulcan change, a traditional changeup, a circle change, a cut change, like I said. And so it's kind of hard to differentiate. But Nathan Eovaldi, his splitter, those are classified technically as changeups, and that was one of the best pitchers that for any of these guys for the Rangers last year, a -8 run value, which was in the very red indication. Opposing batters hit under 200 against it in the 180s, slugged in the 220s, 229. The whiff rate was nearly 40%. The strikeout rate was nearly a third batters, and the put away rate was about a quarter. About a quarter of the opposing batters. Just his splitter is so incredibly effective, and it's very effective while paired with that fastball as well. And like I just said about Jose Leclerc's cut changeup versus his circle changeup, both those pitches were very effective. Like I said, the slider or cut change was -7. The circle change was a -4. So it's hard to differentiate. I'm kind of giving the edge a little bit to Eovaldi, but Leclerc having two changeups that are both so stupid good, that is definitely something to keep an eye on. If we're talking about the curveball, not a whole lot of great curveballs on this team. Not a whole lot of guys who are making the most of those. John Gray has one that he throws a little bit. Martin Perez has one that he throws every once in a while. Same Andrew Heaney has just scrapped the curveball altogether, which was good because it was getting absolutely lit up in years past, and that was one of the changes that the Dodgers made with him that made him a lot more effective in 2022. And Jacob deGrom, it's his fourth pitch. It's his curveball. Yeah, it's still the best one that the Rangers have. Like, absolutely insane. He only throws it 4% of the time. It's 83 miles an hour. It's got some just really wicked movement, and it's incredibly effective when paired with his other pitches. Not his most effective pitch by any means. The best season of it actually was in 2018. He had a -6 run value, and that was the year that he won a Cy Young. I believe that was one of his back-to-back Cy Young seasons. He had a -25 run value on his four-seamer and -18 on his slider. Just kind of nuts. Just kind of nuts, this guy. Absolutely bonkers. And then there's one last pitch. I wanted to give a shout out to Martin Perez. I thought that his changeup would be up there, but the run value was not quite the same. But one of the best pitches the Rangers had last year was not only his sinker, which was a -9 run value, but his cutter, which was a -12, which I think was by far the best pitch that any Ranger had last year. He started using his cutter a lot more effectively, stopped using the four-seamer, and it made him just an incredibly effective pitcher. And he had such a great year last year. Really, really loved what I saw from Martin Perez. So I got to throw that cutter in there as a different kind of pitch. It's kind of in the slider vein. So if you wanted to give him the edge, Martin Perez's cutter was more effective overall than Jacob deGrom's slider last year, which feels like an insane thing to say. And I don't think it's going to be the case this year, obviously depending on the health. So a lot of this goes into how many innings these guys pitched. So that's why deGrom's numbers weren't as insane as they normally are, because he only pitched in 62 or whatever innings last year. But still, really, really good pitch. And I wanted to give some Martin Perez love on this because the Rangers have a lot of pretty quality starters on here. The last one, command. It's Jacob deGrom. He throws pitches where he wants, when he wants to. He does not walk guys. Evaldi is definitely up there as well and could be the winner in this, but I think it's got to go to deGrom because his stuff is just so incredibly effective at throwing it exactly where he wants, when he wants it, how he wants it, which is just going to be very, very fun to watch. Anyway, let's look at the top 10 list here. It is time for the top 10 list. Locked On tweeted this out today. The top 10 position players as voted by the Locked On MLB host. So here we go. This is a nice, very pretty graphic. I believe it was Cam that ended up putting this one out. So if you are listening to this and not watching it, then I will read this for you. At number 1, we have Shohei Ohtani. Number 2, this is the projections for 2023. So who we are predicting. Not who we think is the best right now, but who are we expecting to have the best seasons in 2023. So number 1, Shohei Ohtani. Number 2, Aaron Judge. Number 3, Mike Trout. Number 4, Yordan Alvarez. Number 5, Julio Rodriguez, all the way at number 5. Really, really impressive stuff for the guy who's going to be a second-year player, reigning AL Rookie of the Year. Really, really nice season last year. Number 6, we have Jose Ramirez. Number 7, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Number 8, Rafael Devers. Number 9, Kyle Tucker. And number 10, Adley Rutschman. 2 guys who are going to be in their second year on the top 10. And I ain't mad about it. I ain't mad about it at all. I have a little bit different of a list than these guys, than we as a collective, guys and gal. I think we just have one late. Anyway, doesn't matter. My top 3 is the exact same. I have Shohei Ohtani number 1, Aaron Judge number 2, Mike Trout number 3. I thought that was pretty much a no-brainer. I went back and forth on whether to put Trout ahead of Judge, but I mean, Judge is coming off one of the best offensive seasons that we've seen in baseball in such a long time, that it's going to be, it would have been tough to put him behind Mike Trout. Number 4, I mean, we all have, as a collective, voted Yordan Alvarez. I wasn't quite as high. I mean, Yordan had a fantastic season. He's playing the field a little bit more. He's got a big arm, and he doesn't have that much left field to patrol because of that stupid Crawford box in in Houston, and offensively, he's one of the best players in all of baseball. Had an absolutely phenomenal, disgustingly good offensive season last year. It's very, very upsetting. But I have Jose Ramirez here at number 4 because Jose Ramirez just did not get nearly enough love. He is one of the best players in all of baseball. He is so incredibly consistent. He does literally everything well. He was the 4th most valuable player in terms of WAR, according to Fangraphs, a 6.2 WAR season. Alvarez actually had a 6.6 WAR season, which is kind of nuts. It just kind of goes to show how much offensive value he provided. But I really love Jose Ramirez. He's a switch hitter. He's a guy who defends incredibly well at his position at third base. He gets on base. He doesn't strike out. He walks at a really high rate. He hits for power. Had 29 home runs last year. He plays nearly every single day. He also steals bases very effectively for a guy who looks to be a little bit bigger. He's got 20 stolen bases last year and 29 home runs. Played 157 games, and he was such an integral part in that Cleveland Guardians team that was so freaking good last year. I really don't think that he gets nearly enough love, and I wanted to give him that. So number 5, I have Yordan Alvarez. Number 6, I have Julio Rodriguez. Rodriguez had a fantastic season last year, like absolutely phenomenal. Top 10 in WAR according to baseball. According to Fangraphs, and I believe, 5th according to Baseball Reference at 6.2 WAR. He was only behind Aaron Judge, Andre Jimenez, Yordan Alvarez, and Mike Trout, and he missed significant time last year. I believe it was, he only played in 132 games, so he missed 30 games. It was still so incredibly effective, a huge part of that Seattle team breaking that postseason drought. Really fun and really upsetting that he is going to be in our division for a long time. Signed a 10-year contract extension, which is good for him and very upsetting for Rangers fans. At number 7, I have Kyle Tucker on here, another AL West thorn in the side, a guy who we voted as a collective at 9. I thought he should have been a little bit higher. I really, really love what Kyle Tucker does. He reminds me, if I was going to do comps, which I don't love to do for prospects, Evan Carter is what I think he could end up being like, because he's a guy who gets on base at a very high level. He is also someone who I think is going to benefit from the shift being banned or restricted, and he does everything well. He's incredibly good defensively in right field. I can't count how many times he's robbed home runs from the Rangers in right field, in both in Arlington and in Houston. Very, very upsetting, but I think a really, really good player. At number 8, I'm showing my homerism here. I'm putting Corey Seager there. I think he's going to have a fantastic breakout season. I don't think he got nearly enough love for how great he was last year. I don't even remember if he was a finalist in the Silver Slugger for shortstop. I think he was. I think he's one of the 4. But still, had 33 home runs, led all shortstop, the most home runs hit by a left-handed hitting shortstop in MLB history. I think his defense is definitely slept on. And I think the shift being banned is really going to make people remember this guy is freaking good. He was healthy last year. He was getting his footing in a new place, and I think he's going to be outstanding next year. Number 9 on this list, I have Andres Jimenez. I cannot believe that we as a collective did not have him in the top 10. He had a 6.4 season according to Baseball Reference and Fangraphs. Do you know how hard it is to get a 6.4 season according to both of those sites? It is incredibly difficult. He was the best second baseman in baseball by far last year. I really, really loved what I saw from him, a guy who the only thing he doesn't really do is he doesn't walk at a super high rate, 6.1% walk rate, doesn't have a crazy high strikeout, but he plays incredible defense, great overall offensive value. I think he just really does not get appreciated enough, and especially since he's in Cleveland, a team that not everybody pays a lot of attention to, and plays a position that not everybody pays a lot of attention to at second base. He was absolutely phenomenal last season, and the fact that he wasn't hitting in the top 3 of Cleveland's lineup in the playoffs still boggles my freaking mind. And at number 10, I have Vladimir Guerrero Jr. He's too good to not be a top 10 player. He had a really down year for him, which was still, I think, 32 home runs last year, and really, really good offensive value. But yeah, he didn't win the Silver Slugger, which is his whole thing, is being a huge offensive force. Nathaniel Lowe just had a better offensive season than him. So I got to put him all the way at number 10, which is still a very, very good place to be. Now, let's look at the NL list. I will go through this one a little bit quicker. As a collective, we voted number 1, Mookie Betts. Number 2, no, we did not do that. That was my list. Okay. as a collective, Locked On voted Mookie Betts number 1, Juan Soto number 2, Manny Machado 3, Ronald Acuna Jr. at 4, Paul Goldschmidt, the reigning MVP, at 5, Fernando Tatis Jr. at 6, 7 is Nolan Arenado, 8, Freddie Freeman, 9, Trey Turner, and 10 is Bryce Harper. My list is a little bit different from that. At number 1, I still have Mookie Betts, but at number 2, I have Manny Machado. He was just so incredibly good last year, and if not for just the outrageously, ridiculously good season that Paul Goldschmidt had last year, then I think Machado would have won MVP. I think I still would have voted for him MVP, Machado that is, because he was just absolutely outstanding on a team that was capital G going through it last year, got them to the playoffs, got them there in a good position where they took down the Dodgers. I think he's just absolutely phenomenal. I have Juan Soto at number 3. It's just so good. Had a bit of a down year last year. I think being in that lineup is the deepest lineup I think he's ever been in, which is really saying something because he's already been on a World Series winning team that had, I believe Bryce Harper was, no, he wasn't there. Never mind. He had just left, but still has been on some good teams in the past. Number 4, I have Paul Goldschmidt. Just had such an incredibly good year last year. It's hard to doubt what he did as well. At number 5, I cannot believe that this guy did not make our top 10. I have Francisco Lindor. He was one of the best shortstops in all of baseball last year. He's just so incredibly good. He does, like I said about some of the other guys, I really value a guy who does every single thing well. Defensively, Francisco Lindor is fantastic. He was top 5 in FWAR for National League players. He was behind Freddie Freeman, Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenado, and Manny Machado, and he was ahead of JT Realmuto, Mookie Betts, Dansby Swanson, Trey Turner, and Jeff McNeil as well. He had a 6.8 Fangraphs WAR season. Absolutely phenomenal. The on base was in the high 330s at 339. Slug just 1 point below 450. Hit 26 home runs while playing phenomenal defense. Played 161 games. He's just so incredibly good, and I feel like even though he's on the Mets, he just doesn't get enough attention for how incredibly good he is, and I think that's a darn shame. Number 6, I have Nolan Arenado, one of the better defensive third basemen, one of the better third basemen of his generation. Wish he was I thought for a hot minute that he might be the heir apparent to Adrian Beltre at third base, but that was not to be because Rangers couldn't match the middling prospect package that the Cardinals did to go get him. Whatever. It's another thing. It's fine. I'm fine. Totally over it. But Nolan Arenado, really darn good player. Number 7, I have JT Realmuto. I love myself a good catcher. I'm surprised that I didn't put Adley Rutschman at 10 over Vladdy Jr. just because I really love defensive value, and Vladdy doesn't have that. But it felt hard for me to put two guys who were in their second year. As good as they both were last year, it felt hard for me to put Adley Rutschman up there as well. But JT Realmuto is the best catcher in baseball. He is just so incredibly valuable offensively, defensively. We saw what he did for the Phillies in that stretch run. He is just an incredibly good player that I don't think gets enough love. Number 8, I have Ronald Acuna Jr. He has been incredibly good. He's been one of the better players when healthy, but that is a big asterisk. He has not been able to stay healthy, and he was not at his most effective last year. He just didn't quite look like himself, which was kind of disappointing. He only had a 2.8 WAR season last year, hit 266. He just did not look like the Ronald Acuna Jr. that we have seen in the past, in 2019 when he only finished 5th in MVP voting, even though he had an 883 OPS, 41 homers, and 37 stolen bases. Just one of the more ridiculous seasons we've seen in recent memory. And he also missed significant time in 2021. He had a 990 OPS that year and a 987 in the shortened 2020 season. But last year, he just wasn't quite himself, even though he was a lot healthier, played 119 games, which is the second most he's played in his career. I need to see it a little bit more. I want to know that he is going to be healthy and be himself for me to put him a little bit higher. But again, he has the potential to be the best player in the National League. At number 9 on my list, I have Freddie Freeman. Just really, really solid. Good first baseman, incredibly valuable offensively, one of the better hitters in all of baseball. Definitely a lot of value there. And at number 10, Fernando Tatis Jr. I think some of his value of being a shortstop is going to be really taken away, having him play a new position. Also, he's still coming off the, year and a half it's been since he's really played baseball. He played, 1-2 minor league games against Frisco before he got dinged with a suspension. But there's just a lot of questions about him and how much value he's going to have, and if he's going to play shortstop, if he's going to play the infielder. What the heck is going to be the deal with Fernando Tatis Jr.? There's a lot of questions. There's definitely the most variance there. He could be like the 20th best player in the National League this year, or he could be by far the best or the best player in all of baseball. He's just that freaking electric. But again, there's a lot of question marks there. But that is my list for the NL. Like I said, I had Mookie Betts, Manny Machado, Juan Soto, Paul Goldschmidt, Francisco Lindor, Nolan Arenado, JT Realmuto, Ronald Acuna Jr., Freddie Freeman, and Fernando Tatis Jr. That is going to do it for this edition of Locked On Rangers. We'll get another update about Jacob deGrom tomorrow. We can upgrade our deGrom rankings, or probably stand pat, maybe even lower it a little bit, but very fun to have some spring training action back. Thank you all so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. Now make your next listen Locked On MLB Prospects. Host Lindsey Crosby is a prospect encyclopedia, and he's going deep on the MLB stars of tomorrow. It is free and available wherever you get your podcast. Thank you all so much for listening and subscribing, and until next time, don't forget to enjoy baseball.